I found your wallet. Yeah. No, probably not for a while. Yeah, I just got class 30. Alright, yeah, for sure.
Oh, sorry.
He works at the 365.
Do you like the shakes or no?
Yeah, like. So.
Oh, am I still able to like get water from the water dispensers around school, or is that gonna affect?
As far as I know, there's no boil water advisory, but there's still testing.
That's good enough for me. I'm gonna go get some water.
Is that what it says? Yeah. Well, not
You just say sugar. That's why I like the house teas, because the other flavors we have, like sugar tasting, plus the shakes are pretty good. Yeah, that's so good. Work up that taste. Like, go.
Secret is so big. She doesn't know.
Yes. Now it's like getting ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not gonna do anything like. It's just gonna be like other than I should skip, but
Well, happy Friday, everyone. So, the March 13th, anything? Yeah. Okay. What day did we hit on the heavy rains? I can't remember. What was that? Was that Tuesday? Was it Monday? When was that? Do you remember when we had all the thunderstorm, the lightning and all that, and the heavy down flooding? When was that?
I think it was Monday.
It was Monday night, maybe? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I live out, just over the Michigan-Ohio border, but You know, when I drive in, you know, I'm driving by all these flooded farm fields. And apparently, you know, the heavy rains also flooded, and the water entered the sewage system. I mean, it's a really poor design if you think about it, the way the sewer systems are set up. But because it allows, you know, rainwater can enter into the sewer systems and then cause it to overflow. And apparently, that's actually what happened. So, you know, we had this alert here as of you know, Wednesday morning. You know, officials are testing the water to see if there's evidence of sewage. So, do you remember what is the most common microbe that they test for as evidence of fecal contamination? It's E. coli. So that's what they're going to be testing for, is E. coli. And there's actually special media that you know, we have in the laboratory that you can use to selectively, you know, see if E. coli is present in the water, and then you can measure, you know, the numbers based on colonies, you know, per volume of water. And then I don't know if you remember what is the level of E. coli that's safe to have in drinking water. It's 0. Okay. 0 is the safe level. So if there's any E. coli in the water, that's not safe to drink. Okay, not that you would be drinking, you know, river water, right? Okay. Anyways, as of today, as far as we know, they're still in that testing phase. So just be aware of that. All right, so we had that warning there about drinking water, and then you know, remember we did talk about some of those that one instance in Milwaukee where over 400,000 people were, you know, drank that contaminated drinking water, and that, you know, led to an infection due to cryptosporidium, and led to diarrhea, which could actually be very serious. It could cause dehydration and could be lethal. Okay, another microbe that we are, another prozoan that we need to be aware of that's present in fresh water, so like in lakes and streams, is a prozoan called Giardia lamblia. And this is super common too. So, like a lot of times if you go out maybe camping or hiking out in nature away from civilization, you'll encounter some really beautiful lakes, pristine. You know, no buildings are around, no evidence of people, you know, just you, trees, and maybe some, you know, animals. And you may be tempted to drink the water because it looks crystal clear. Don't, because that's when people get infected with Giardia, because Giardia is pretty much everywhere. And that's probably the reasons why, you know, the water gets treated with, through chlorination in order to kill microorganisms, including Giardia. So this is a super common prozoan found in bodies of water. Okay, so in other words, you be very careful about drinking water that is safe to drink, that has been treated. Another interesting prozoan that's not related to diseases are the slime molds, and I'm going to show you a really cool video of a slime mold called Dictyostelium. And this is one that's really fascinated scientists for a number of years because of its interesting life cycle. So this slime mold called Dictyostelium discoideum has a vegetative stage, a feeding stage that's composed of these unicellular forms. So they'll go out and they'll actually eat bacteria and then grow that way. But then, interestingly, when the food runs out, then these unicellular these cells will actually come together and form this multicellular structure that can form spores. And do you remember what are some of the unique characteristics of spores? Or what are some of the characteristics of spores? They can spread through air, and think of them as like dormant cells that can withstand harsh conditions, right? And then so that's the idea, is that when food runs out, then they'll create spores that can withstand conditions where there's very little food until better conditions return, and then they can grow. So here's a little diagram that's in your textbook here that kind of shows the different forms of Dictyostelium. So you have the vegetative unicellular form. That's the one that's actively feeding and growing. But then when food runs out, those individual cells will come together to form a multicellular plasmodium that will then form this aerial body that can create spores that could be dispersed through the air. Right? Okay, so I'm going to back up a minute here, and we're going to actually see this really cool video here. Some of you may have actually seen some of these videos before, because sometimes they're used in sci-fi movies. So that was time lapse, though. I mean, it doesn't grow up, super fast like that. But I know that some of you are taking developmental biology, and like this is that's like one of the typical model organisms that you often study in that class. So wasn't that cool? Okay, where are we? All right, so you got to see, the individual cells coming together to form the fruiting body, What you didn't get to see are the spores that would be released, but I think you get the idea there. So that was super cool, and it's something that has fascinated people for a long time. And did you catch in the captions that that person actually was kind of exposed to that dictyostelium as an undergraduate and started making movies then, and that kind of led to a lifetime interest in dictyostelium. Yeah. All right, so in this chapter we learned a lot about fungi. We learned about protozoans. Now we're moving on to protists, including the dinoflagellates. And there's a lot of different kind of dinoflagellates, but here's probably one of the most famous one, and it's a photosynthetic organism that lives in large bodies of water, like in the Atlantic Ocean. And this one's called Karenia, and it's famous because of its reddish color. So it has reddish pigments that it uses for capturing solar energy, and then it can use that solar energy in order to make sugars to grow and reproduce. And under certain conditions, there'll be a massive growth that's seen, by this reddish color in the water, and that reddish, that growth is similar to an algal bloom, and they call that large presence of the Karenia a red tide. So the red tide is named because of the reddish color that's present in the water, that's visible from the surface. And this is of concern because the Karenia makes a toxin called brevetoxin. And this is something that will be, that can kill fish. So when you see this kind of a reddish color, it's accompanied by a lot of dead floating fish around it. All right, some of you are already familiar with the red tide because this is the name for, I don't know if it's a mascot for what state school? Alabama, that's right. The Alabama Crimson Tide. It's named after Karenia. So, I don't know. I think they should have called themselves the Alabama Dinoflagellates. Okay. But there's lots of different kinds of dinoflagellates. Like Eddie, you said that you went swimming in, was it Puerto Rico or somewhere else? Jamaica. And those dinoflagellates they were like fluorescent or something in the evening.
Yeah, like when you got in the water, they lit up. The water looked like it was up.
Yeah, very good. So a lot of cool organisms out there. Okay, so if you see anything like this, don't go swimming in the water. And then we're going to wrap up by looking at some algae here. And then, because we're finishing a chapter, we're actually going to go downstairs afterwards and take a look at our blood auger plates because what I've noticed is that the red color is actually fading even though it's in the dark. So I want to just make sure that you get to see the results before it kind of disappears. So the algae, these are the ones that you're probably most familiar with. These are photosynthetic organisms that you typically find in bodies of water. They really vary in size and shapes and colors. There are single cell algae that, that may be flagellated or may not be. They can be found at the surface of the water floating, or they could be found lower, down in the depths. Some of the larger algae are multicellular. People call them seaweed. Seaweed is edible. They could be very nutritious, but they also could be contaminated like all other forms of aquatic organisms these days, unfortunately. But anyways, the larger ones can actually form these root-like structures called holdfasts that will help to anchor them to the bottom of that particular body of water. And I'll show you a picture of these larger multicellular algae here, so you can kind of get a sense of how big that they can become and how they can stay in place using these holdfasts. I know a lot of times we associate plants as being the main producer of oxygen on the planet, but it's actually the algae. And because they're photosynthetic too, they're releasing oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis. And it actually makes more sense once you think about that algae are the larger producers of oxygen based on, if you think about our world and just how much of the surface is water. Oceans, and that's where you find all the algae. We learned before that there are these small organisms that can form an important part of the food chain that are, serve as food for larger organisms, and algae are part of that phytoplankton. And the phytoplankton is just this general group of small organisms in water that can serve as food for bigger organisms like fish. All right, so let's look at some pictures. We like pictures. Okay, so we're going to look at some different types. So let's start off with the diatoms. The diatoms. So here's a cool picture that was, this is taken under a microscope. And what's really cool about the diatoms is that they have this shell made of silica. So similar to your petri dishes where you have a top and a bottom, the diatoms also have a top and bottom. And so this is kind of like looking at the top or bottom of like one of your petri dishes. And similar to glass, they're transparent, but they are colored inside too. And you can see here that they come in all sorts of sizes and beautiful shapes here, which makes them super cool looking. So these are part of the phytoplankton.
Where are those found?
They were found in the ocean.
I get that, but I've seen a lot of Pacific. I've never seen that. That's cool.
I know. I mean, these are microscopic, so you probably can't see them. Just swimming in the ocean.
Okay.
What you may have seen is when they die. So the next picture is going to show you when they die, they can settle because they do have mass, and they form a superfine particle that we refer to as diatomaceous earth. So it's like finer than sand. So I don't know if you've seen that. if you've seen diatomaceous earth, then you've seen the diatoms.
Maybe I have.
Okay. Okay, so people use diatomaceous earth, you know, mainly for filtering, and because, you know, the idea is that because water can, you know, this can serve as like a sieve that will filter water. All right, let's look at some bigger algae. So we're going to be looking at large brown algae, and they're often referred to as kelp. So you may have heard of kelp. It's also known as seaweed, but kelp. And we'll look at a picture here. They can grow as long as 75 meters. So you remember a meter is a little bit longer than a yardstick. So, you know, we're approaching the length of a football field here. Okay, here we go. Here's our kelp. At the bottom is where you would find those root-like structures. Anyone remember the names of those? What would anchor the kelp to the seabed here? Keep it from washing away? The holdfast, that's right. So at the very bottom would be the holdfast. And then you can see we have this almost like a tree-like structure, right? With these various kind of blades coming off of it that would be able to absorb the solar light that filters through the water. And they're named brown algae because of their color. They're kind of orangish brown. Okay, isn't that awesome? Does anyone scuba by any chance? Have you seen anything like that?
No, I've only scuba in Hawaii. Never. We get a lot of that in Washington, but it's too cold and dark to scuba dive.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of it from a boat, you know, go through a kelp field where you can't really go through it because you get stuck. You probably get tangled up.
So dense, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have brown algae, then we have the more common green algae, and I should say that's green algae is more common in our area of the world here, but it's also prevalent, you know, in other places of the world too. Salt water, you know, you'll see it in the Atlantic, in the Pacific, Gulf of Mexico. They're green because of the chlorophylls that are present. So these are the same chlorophylls that are present in land plants. Here's another cool looking picture that's in your textbook of a green algae. And this one's called Volvox. And this is interesting because it's referred to as a colonial algae made up of individual cells here. So like this circle here is a separate cell from the one next to it, and then they're all encased in the same colony. So that's kind of interesting. And then we're going to take a quick look, quick slides about red algae. I think this may actually be our last one, to be honest with you. You know, where I worked before, I actually had a really nice specimen of dried red algae. You guys know what bacon looks like, right? I was kind of reddish. Trying to imagine a giant piece of bacon. That's what red algae looks like. Am I making you hungry? All right, so this is actually our last slide here. So again, the colors are due to the pigments that they use for photosynthesis. So we got these pretty cool cyanins and phycoerythrins here. And yeah, you don't see these giant bacon-like structures here because they only grow in salt waters. All right, I want you to take a moment here, finish up your notes, and then we're gonna go downstairs to the lab. We're gonna take a look at your blood agar plates and see if your bacteria can break down hemoglobin or not.